Hello and welcome back to The Alchemists, a limited series podcast you'll quickly come to know as your ride or die for State of Social 2024. My name is Andrés Lopez Varela. You can call me ALV. In fact, I'm pretty sure a lot of people only know me as ALV and aren't sure what those letters stand for. Today, we are recording on the traditional lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people. In this episode, I chat with international marketing and strategy leader Paula Bloodworth, founding partner of creative agency Berlin, Richard Berney, and global creative director Ken Leung. We tackled the question, cultural creativity, what comes first? In front of a live audience here at State of Social.
People have overcorrected on purpose and gotten really high on it and misinterpreted it. And they think that means you need to be earnest and serious, and if you're a toothpaste brand, you suddenly need to change the world.
Before we get into that chat, I have to say it's been a mega couple of days here at Optus Stadium. We've just had 2 very full days of thought-provoking keynotes, mind-opening workshops, and breakouts from some of the world's brightest marketing minds. We've had the most fun chats between sessions, waiting for coffees, standing in the lunch lines. Oh my goodness. State of Social 2024 has been a phenomenal experience. And I really believe this is the best marketing conference in Australia. And so does everyone who was here.
It's just the lineup of the speakers are awesome. They're so knowledgeable. They're like literally know the latest and the greatest in social media, marketing.
Michael talking about irreverence with Ryanair. Make it look more budget. Embrace budget. Make it look silly. Don't make it a perfect circle. Make it a squiggly circle.
The Juice Box chat by Joel Pember. I found that fascinating.
Yeah, I liked Beck Smith. We saw her last year as well and she was amazing.
I've actually really enjoyed learning about the law behind everything.
Yeah, the workshops so far have been amazing. Yeah, really, really good.
It's my first year. I've really enjoyed the keynotes and the quality of presenters have been really good. I've learnt so much.
Definitely the depth of presenters and the fact that they have come from here, there and everywhere.
We are joined today by 3 of the alchemists of our industry as we tackle the question, culture or creativity, what comes first? We're recording this episode here in front of a live audience at State of Social 2024. For the people that are listening later in their feeds, I want you to give them a big cheer on 3. 1, 2, 3. That's it. All right, let's do it. It's my pleasure to welcome our alchemists to the stage to kick off this big conversation, starting with Paula Bloodworth. Paula, as we saw this morning, is an internationally recognised strategy leader who is currently working with Idris Elba and most recently on the high-impact Don't Stop Your Future anti-knife crime campaign in the UK. Please put your hands together for Paula Bloodworth. Our next alchemist to join us on stage is Richard Berney. Richard is an award-winning executive creative director, founding partner of creative agency Berlin, and a hopeful environmentalist. Perhaps most interestingly though, Richard also moonlights in the hit theatre show My Greatest Period Ever as the universe's only known menstrual doodler. And he's just returned from playing that show at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Please welcome Richard Berney to the stage. And this empty chair over here will shortly be filled by Ken Leung. Ken is a visionary creative leader and perhaps one of Perth's greatest creative exports. During 20 years in London and New York, Ken led branding for the world's largest fashion brands under LVMH and Fast Retailing, and he was also most recently the global creative director at Uniqlo. His work has touched campaigns and creative in cultural capitals all around the world and worked with cultural icons as well. Let's give Ken a round of applause to welcome him to the stage. I want to start by sort of dovetailing with this year's theme of alchemy. And I want to start us off with a bit of a philosophical question. The American poet Sylvia Plath once said, "The worst enemy to creativity is self-doubt." What aspects of your own self-doubt have you each had to overcome to produce creative work, either for yourselves or on behalf of brands? Paula?
I don't know if I agree, actually. I think self-doubt
you don't agree with
drives everything I do. You know, it's the imposter that keeps you hungry, because as soon as you... I don't know, I think I overcompensate and try and actually some of the doubts is where the good stuff is. It's in the vulnerabilities and the weaknesses, yes. And it's the juicy dark side of your character that actually gets to the most sort of revealing solutions. I don't know if I answered your question. I just got really hung up on self-doubt.
Yeah. But maybe... I guess what Sylvia's trying to say is that it might stop you from actually producing the creative work.
Sure. Yeah, I guess it can. once again, I think I kind of lean into it and overwork and maybe work myself too much. But I think, I guess using that to fuel you and work harder and find more and find the solutions to get to something exciting. Because complacency, I think, is also the enemy of creativity.
Rich, how do you feel about that?
I think it's an amazing question. Yeah. Like, I love that question. Did you write? Is that your question?
That's my question. It's not my quote. It's Sylvia Plath.
Yeah, no, it's a really...
I share credit with Sylvia Plath for that question.
Okay, I heard this recently, which I think is really interesting. What does everybody think that the opposite of depression is? Anybody? I know this is a podcast, but whatever.
Yell it out. Elation, okay. Happiness?
That's what I thought. It's expression. The opposite of depression is expression. I can't explain that, but I think you could all work that out if you think about it long enough. I do think that it's very hard to be expressive if you are filled with self-doubt. I think you can get plenty of insights and understanding and empathy from self-doubt. And what I've faced, and I continue to face, I need to explain this, otherwise you might just think I'm an absolute pervy weirdo, but I am a menstrual doodler, right? I'm in this theatre show, and it's about menstrual education. It's about the female hormonal cycle. I'm not the star. My wife is the star. She's fabulous. But I'm on stage, and so I help to bring this mostly to women. And I'm a man, so I'm generally not welcome. That's not true. I've been very welcomed in that space, but there's plenty of self-doubt just being a guy in the red tent. So that would be the answer to your question. Yeah. Where do I feel that? Absolutely there. And I have a knight in front of me who is my wife, and she lets me in and says, hey, it's okay, he's okay,
His friend.
And then I use, the listening and the creativity to deliver that education.
And just before I move on to Ken, I just want you to clarify menstrual doodling.
Oh, sorry, I meant to explain that. Yeah. Like, I draw, not in menstrual blood. I do menstrual education, and I do it, I'm like a cartoonist on stage. So I listen to my wife's science and the stories and the songs, and I bring it to life with live sketch animation. That's why I'm the universe's only menstrual doodler. Yeah. Probably.
Congratulations. Mm-hmm. And Ken, from your point of view, obviously, menstrual doodling aside.
Oh my God, I'm going to sound so boring now.
What about this question around self-doubt and creativity, the tension, the push and pull? Do you use it maybe like Paula says, or do you sort of find ways around it? How does it affect your creative work?
Yeah, I mean, totally. I face self-doubt every morning when I wake up and look in the mirror. So like Paula, I do use it. And it does create barriers, in my head. But I use it to drive me. I think what helped me is trying to define a purpose for what I do. And I did that when I came back to Australia from America and from England. I had this time and space to define what I want to do with my life and my work next. So I've defined my purpose as using my creativity and my experience to help my community. So, if I'm facing moments of self-doubt, me being back here and wanting to help the creative community of Western Australia and Perth through the work that I do, lets me gives me a bigger picture to step out of myself and step out of my head, and gives me the courage to keep on going forward. And then using that in my work, I'm always questioning myself, always challenging myself to do better. That's kind of just innate, but that self-doubt kind of drives me to prove myself to myself as well as prove myself to other people.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so that sense of purpose and sort of, serving a community, is that something that you guys can relate to in a sense from a creative point of view?
I mean, I have a luxury too. I get to work with Idris on some pretty purposeful campaigns, the anti-knife crime thing, but to your point, I think it goes beyond yourself, you sort of remove yourself from the equation a bit and go, how are you helping? How are you going the extra mile to actually solve the problem? And there's purpose kind of in everything you do. I think it helps, you drive and sort of, remove your ego from it a little bit and go, actually helping and doing something is better than doing nothing.
I've been thinking about this a lot in the last year because I've left one job and I've started a little company, and it's like, what do we want to do? And so anyway, there's two parts to it for me. The one is it's such a strong driver, to help, to have a sense of duty, to actually get something done that your community or the world or whatever cares about, like you don't want to fuck that up.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not just about getting paid. Like you want to fix something or improve something, so there needs to be some pride there. So it's a great driver of mojo, and creativity needs that, and then everybody gets on board, whatever. And the other thing is, I think it's super nice to have a sense of responsibility for what we do.
Yep.
It's not something that people talk about very much. I know that you're practicing it in like quite a scaled way, but just knowing that there's a duty to what we're doing with mass communication, you know, we got to know that because it's big, what we do, and it can have like profound impact. It's very, very powerful. So I think it's really nice what we do, and I think with that comes, you got to be responsible for that power and like the good stuff that you can do.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. I think that's a good way of looking at the work that we do, and you know, thinking about not just about selling a shoe or selling a cookie or selling a house or whatever, but actually how do you contribute more broadly to a community or a culture. And that's what we want to talk more about actually today, is about the concept of culture and what it means for us in the marketing game. And we're living in a time where this idea of maybe a monoculture, this dominant view of the world, this dominant way of interacting with the world is, you know, rapidly disappearing, vanished perhaps already. And you know, some say that we're more polarised than ever. Some say we're just exploring different, more authentic identities in different ways. You know, some say we're in moral decline. Sure, you know, everyone's got a way of thinking about this time. What is the place? And maybe Ken, maybe you can start talking a little bit about this. What is the place for brands in that kind of a world where we can sometimes even struggle to agree on, like, if the sky is blue, you know, if you know the earth is round, if an election was stolen, you know, off the top of my head, some examples, you know.
Sure.
Is that sort of a landscape? Is that, you know, aren't brands ultimately inconsequential in that space?
No, I mean, I think, you know, I look at brands like I look at myself. To me, brands have the responsibility, you know, once they reach a certain size, they have a level of power, they have a platform, they have a community of people that they can speak to. And it's my opinion that brands should use that power for purpose, whatever that may be. Now, some brands, you know, exist on just selling product, and that's fine, you know, that's great. But I think that people that really fall in love with brands, they fall in love with the brand because they've got a purpose, they pick a lane, you know, whatever, right or left or whatever it is.
Yep.
I think that's when you create emotional connection, love, you know, passion for a brand. I think that if you can't always please everyone, and when brands try and do that, they get watered down. We've seen it with, you know, Gap in America. They tried to please everyone. There was no point of view. So if you have a point of view, same as a person. If someone's wishy-washy and doesn't take a stance on it, I don't want to. It's too vanilla. I don't want to be with that person. So I think that the best brands have a focus. They have a point of view, and they have a purpose.
So really, you know, leading into that fragmentation from a cultural point of view and being like, this is the group, this is the community, this is the culture that we feel most aligned with, kind of, you know, is perhaps the best way for brands to serve a community, perhaps. Does that make sense? How does that sound to you, Paula?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big advocate of having a point of view in culture. That's pretty much where I start and where I think the energy comes from, so I couldn't agree more. I think people have overcorrected on purpose and gotten really high on it and misinterpreted it. And they think that means you need to be earnest and serious, and if you're a toothpaste brand, you suddenly need to change the world. Purpose can also just be like bringing some fun and entertainment to the world. And purpose can be in how you run your organization. Do you have a diverse organization? Are you, inspiring work-life balance? All those things as a company, what are you putting out? Versus trying to sell a bunch of toothpaste off, trying to save the world. So I think purpose has almost gotten a bit out of control, or rather misinterpreted. And when it's good and it's applied authentically to a brand, and they find that community, and they actually do make a difference, and they put their money where their mouth is, then it's like dynamite. But I think, we also need to remember that purpose is particularly at a point of polarization, and I don't even know the state of the world. Maybe bringing a bit of joy is also a good purpose to have.
Yeah, so you know, that concept of purpose I think is really interesting when we think about people's different views of the world and their different experiences of the world, and also culturally where they sit, whether it's within a sort of a physical sense in the real world or in the digital sense online. Is there an opportunity then in terms of what you've both mentioned about purpose and about finding the right purpose, but also maybe not, sort of betting the farm on purpose, if you like? Is there sort of a balance there where there can be a difference made to culture, a positive difference made to culture, by actually, selling shoes or cookies or homes, for example, Rich?
Absolutely, because there's so much resources in brands. Yeah. I know that the reason they exist is to make money. It's a business. If we're talking about selling shoes, they are very well resourced. They have really clever people. They have big audiences. So they have the potential to do good. They definitely do. There's nothing that says that they should. I mean, yes, there is. It's a nice thing to do, but it's not, what they need to do. But it's just what do you want to do? What do you want to do when you get up? You want to make money, but it's just it's what you were saying this morning about Alba. His philosophy is let's do what feels good rather than what's intellectually good. So,
that purpose has to come authentically, and often it comes from the founder. If it's a really founder-led company, I had the privilege of working with some amazing founders like Tadashi Yanai at Uniqlo. And what I do when I work with brands is I really question them, and we try and drill down to what is the essence of what drives you, other than selling clothes or whatever. And it has to feel authentic. Otherwise, when brands try and buy into this purpose, we're saving the world, we're greenwashing, where it just feels the customer is smarter than brands give them credit for, and just feels gross. It's
falls flat.
It falls flat, exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, let's shift it into a sort of a more practical conversation. With that in mind, what do you think are the sort of the best ways for brands to access those kind of cultural, subculture trends to make the work that we do more relevant to the audiences that matter to us? What's the best way that we can contribute and, I guess, add value to that culture rather than just borrow from it?
I go out in the jungle. I find brands are so increasingly more removed from the realities of people. And also, culture is such a buzzword. Everyone just throws that word around. And most of the time they mean youth, by the way. And you're like, I just want a young
You mean nobody's talking about boomer culture?
There's cultural, what culture do you want to add to? And I think you're right. A lot of these brands, instead of adding to it or leading it, they're stealing from it. Particularly in diverse communities as well. They're appropriating a lot of culture versus contributing to it. So how are you going out there and understanding your audience? And I see a lot of research projects that are quant studies or online surveys or whatever, but I'd rather have half a day with an interesting person who's obsessed with gardening or whatever it is, whatever their quirk is, understand them in a deep way and mean something to them than what the quant study says for 5,000 people. And I don't think we do that enough. I think we're gutting that from our marketing plans.
Yeah, Ken, you were nodding there when Paul was saying
the research thing, I'm not a research guy. I'm all about getting people in the building that actually authentically live it. And I'll give an example of this idea of culture and bringing that to a brand. So I don't know if Virgil Abloh, for instance, when he was hired by Louis, it was a controversial decision. He was outside of the industry. He wasn't a trained designer. He wasn't French. But what he did bring to the brand was obviously his community of people. He's endlessly creative. Talk about creative. I've met him at a party in Paris way before he was big, and I could see then the kind of creative energy from him. So when he got into Louis, he had this purpose, and what he did authentically was elevate opportunities of creativity for people of color. So he brought along his community from Chicago, young black creators, people of color, and that's how I think he was in terms of purpose, was able to better the world. Of course he was selling shoes, and then it brought his community of people to the brand and made it cool, and it brought new energy back to Vuitton, and that's obviously been carried forward by Pharrell. But I think that was a good example of culture and creativity
colliding well.
Colliding in a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah. I think, you know, marketers and brands hold this goal of shaping culture with their creative ideas. That's kind of almost the ultimate aspiration of the marketer of their success, aside from like selling shoes, right? So, like, you know, broadly speaking, those are sort of big goals, and it makes sense because this concept of a culture shaping creative idea, in air quotes, can galvanize people around a brand. You know, like even small things. Like I always read the inside of Tony's chocolate only bars, like for example. Shout out for Tony. Shout out for Tony. Tell me, do you think brands, Rich? Maybe tell me if you think brands that aim to lead or shape culture in these ways, can they truly make like effective, compelling, creative work, or is it a little bit more almost like a sort of a cultural project rather than a commercial project?
I mean, people want to feel. Like, that's all we want. Like, we don't necessarily want to be good, but we definitely want to feel, and good feels good. So I think if the intention is true, if they really actually do want to shift culture in some beneficial way, if the intention is good, there's a pretty good chance they're going to have a good crack at it.
Yep.
If they're doing it for cultural cache, maybe not, probably not. But if the intention is to do it, then like I said before, they're really well resourced and they work with like apex communicators, like the best of the best. And so they got a pretty good shot to do something that people are going to pay attention to, and they will also put access on the table, like how to help.
Yep.
So 100%. They're probably more effective than, I don't know about government, but sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think we're looking at them to do that because they are independent.
Do you agree with that, Paula?
I mean, it's been proven purpose, actually.
Yep.
Commerciality, it does follow if you actually do something in culture and you have a purpose. It's loads of graphs. But I think so few are actually doing it well because they sit at the middle of culture. They don't sit on the edge. More and more brands need to learn to sit on that edge and take a leap. Like, I love the Virgil Abloh, and like every time you sort of get lost in this world, something gets fed to you from Virgil, and you're like, oh, it's like a reminder of how to do it, you know. And he wouldn't have even, I don't even know if you think about the edge, but he was just like, find the people that care about that one thing really deeply, and if you can connect with them, everyone else is going to follow. But it takes, I think, a bit of bravery. Well, not even bravery, because it's actually not brave. If you do it well, it is the smartest, most effective strategy. And the work is set up for the most success because you're actually talking to something happening on the edge of culture that hasn't happened yet. And then you're leading culture rather than following it, or as you said, sort of stealing from it. And I wish we were playing there a bit more, and I fear we're not.
So, of course, people are, you know, people wanted to create these big ideas. They want to create these ideas that are, maybe big is the wrong word, but create these kind of impacting ideas that sort of add to culture and sort of, you know, enrich it. And then, of course, there are people, maybe your higher-ups, who are a little bit nervous about potentially, you know, taking a risk that's involved with a particular subculture that maybe, you know, might be, you know, more sensitive to appropriation or offence because they have a history of being appropriated or offended, right? And I think there's probably legitimate concerns on both sides. Nobody wants to have their company cancelled, except maybe Michael Corcoran and Ryanair, I guess, as we heard this morning. But for communities and for subcultures, for those kind of groups, like, they don't want something that is deeply meaningful to them, as you said, Paula, to be like, you know, appropriated or used just for a quick buck. So how do we assess the kind of value of a creative idea in terms of, like, you know, doing the right thing by those communities and doing the right thing by those cultures? Or do we dial down the courage and the creativity? Like, do we dial it down or do we double down on it in order to kind of make that work?
Ask permission. Like, get them in the room. Do it with them. Like if you do it without them, yeah, that's really risky.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't do that. That's not a good decision.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you just got to bring them in the room early. And actually, honestly, whatever you do will probably be much more interesting. It'll be more original, it'll be more cutting edge, because you've asked somebody who is in it. You know, it isn't like vanilla research from 1,000 people who don't want to offend people. You're actually asking the person that really gives a shit about it, and it is their life. And they'll tell you if it's not okay. Yeah. Like, don't do that. Or they'll tell you, thank God, yeah, let's go, and I'll go with you.
I mean, I would even extend on that and say, if you have to bring them from the outside, then it's not really authentically something you believe in, right? You know, it feels like you're manufacturing it for the sake of something. So it has to come from leadership. It has to come from, within to be authentic.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, well, it's almost time to wrap up. It's a fascinating conversation. Could go for forever, but make strict with time. So, but before we wrap up, I want to play fast and loose with your opinions. I've got some questions that I meant to make you feel a little uneasy, but remember, the whole point is you can play it fast and loose. You're the Alchemists on a show called The Alchemists. So I've imbued you with a special magic to effectively, not screw it up. So I'm going to pick one of you randomly to answer each of these questions, and you just give me what first comes to mind, and the rest of you can agree, disagree, react in shock, storm off the stage, whatever feels right at the time, right? So I'm going to start Rich because he looks the most concerned. So as an alchemist, you create a new substance that can shape culture online. What one thing would you hope to change online for the better with this magical substance?
I'm a tree hugger. I'm an environmentalist. I've been profoundly concerned about where humanity's been going since I was a kid. I think our behaviour is subpar there. Yeah. I would want our behaviour to be more authentic to like what we actually need to do to sort everything out. We're sitting on the edge of hell right now. I just want people to, and myself, everybody to just get on board there. That's what I would do.
Yeah, great. I think it's a great use of that magical substance. Okay. Paula, as an alchemist, you rewrite the laws of the universe with new discoveries, wondrous and new discoveries. What's the latest thing you've learned that you want the audience to know about too?
Can I have his question? What's the latest new discovery?
Yeah, it's something that you've learned recently.
You want everyone else to know.
That you think, oh wow, this is something that everyone else could do.
No.
You can answer Richard's question.
No one knows what they're doing.
No one knows what they're doing.
No one knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like, you figure it out, just get in there. And I said it this morning, but just make you feel something. And everything else and all this other garbage and all these, intellectualism and posturing online and digital and social and what have you.
The
professionalism is too much. No one knows what they're doing. Yeah. Put it out there and have a go.
That's good. I like that. That's great. Ken, as an alchemist, you've created a magical compound in your apothecary that can wipe out one of the social mediums. Ooh. Which one do you wipe out?
Oh shit. TikTok, because I don't understand TikTok. I've got one follower, literally one follower.
Yeah. Is it like your
I just, when I create content for brands, I want to do it as beautifully as possible. And to me, that it's just watered everything down. So
it's a mess.
Be gone, TikTok.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
So many interesting and thought-provoking comments and hot takes. I really appreciate your time. Thank you, all of you. Paula, Rich, Ken, thank you for joining me here on stage, and thank you for being so open and honest with my fast and loose questions as well. Please show your appreciation for the Alchemists, Paula Bloodworth, Richard Berney, and Ken Leung. Thank you. There is plenty more to wrap your ears around on The Alchemists, including heaps of in-depth chats with this year's State of Social speakers. So make sure you follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you heard, give us a 5-star review and tell a mate, or 2, or 3. Tell your mum. The Alchemists is a co-production of State of Social and Creative Fix. The show is produced by me, Andrés Lopez Varela, and Aaron Matthews from Creative Fix, with additional production support by Cal McLean. Meg Coffey is our executive producer. On behalf of all the Alchemists, I'm AOV. I'll catch you next time.